Hey, welcome back to Magic the Gathering for Advanced Players. I'm Matt Sperling. I'm bringing you another quick video based on something that someone tweeted out, a play. The last one was pretty cool. It lets me kind of cut right to the chase. Someone's got a situation that came up, they want to talk about it, or they have a cool play they want to share. So happy to do these, and let's get started. Rich Hagon in this case tweeted out, opponent at 3, 1 card, new card, has 2/3 ransack. I have 3/2 plus 2/2. Main, they tap 2R, undo, pass. If ransack is real, I attack with both. They trade 2/3 for 3/2. My 2/2 hits. Opponent 1, no board. So I do that. They tap 2R, kill the 3/2, block and kill 2/2, go on to win. Question, do you lose to this or attack with 3/2? Why? So there's not a 2/3 that casts the spell ransack. So I didn't know what he was talking about at first. He then followed up. Ransack, i.e. discard and draw. Okay, so he means rummage. No problem. Got that extra tweet. Now I believe the opponent has this card, Merchant of the Veil, in play. 2/3 for 3. And you can pay 2 in a red, discard a card, draw a card. You can rummage with it. Opponent has a new card. Opponent chose not to rummage and passed. And then Rich untapped with his 3/2 and 2/2 against an opponent with 3 life, sent them both in, hoping that there'd be a trade, a forced trade, and a 2 damage through. Instead, opponent played tap 2R, killed, so played something like Slaying Fire, is what I was able to put together. And Rich's board went away, and he lost the game, and he wants us to talk about that. So I tried to recreate the game state here. I don't know the exact details, what colors are people playing, what's in the deck, exactly how much mana, specifically, or perhaps most importantly, does the opponent have enough mana to rummage twice or not? With an opponent at 3 life, and no cards in hand, most of the time that implies a game that's gone on. The opponent can probably rummage twice, and I gave them credit for 6 lands here. I put us on a flood. We probably just drew a land, maybe we played it and then attacked, whatever. Just for the simplicity of the game state, I've made a couple assumptions here to get us to something that we can visualize. But the situation is what Rich described. The opponent has 1 card. We don't know what it is. We being Rich, the opponent. 3 life. In ostensibly a must block the 3/2 situation. But should this card knock this out, of course, this will be a chump attack with the knight. That's what ended up happening. But let's not focus too much on what ended up happening. Rich wants to know what we have done. Do you just kind of tip your cap to the removal spell? So this is the type of situation that comes up fairly often. Is it worth alpha striking into a potential removal? The removal takes away lethal or it takes away the good attack. I came up with a little bit of a rubric here to help us talk about it. So alpha into removal, well, I'm more likely to send him in if I'm losing the removal anyway. Let's talk about each of these in turn. Losing removal anyway. So there's an argument here that I'm not in great shape. If my opponent has removal, not only am my board isn't doing anything, but now my opponent, the next thing I draw might not be doing anything. Now, it turns out I can kind of play towards forcing something there. I can attack with just the 3/2 to kind of force the removal. So in that case, yeah, my next draw is live. My opponent has a rummage. So we're not losing to removal, but removal is still good against us. Indicators the opponent doesn't have removal. Here I think we have the opposite. We'll talk about that in a moment. Inevitability or status quo tilts towards the opponent. I think that's definitely the case here. So inevitability, eventually, an opponent with a repeatable rummage effect in play is going to beat someone who's just simply flooding out. That rummage ability prevents flood, and in fact, it's possible they don't even have all 6 lands out for that reason. Even if they only have 4 or 5 lands and are only rummaging once, then even in that context, look, they're going to be seeing more cards than we are. We're not very far ahead on board. And if nothing changes, if I don't attack, then I'm going to be behind. However, again, we have that attack with just the 3/2. So if the opponent, is trading there, then I don't necessarily have to alpha strike. I don't have to attack with the knight to force a disruption of the status quo. So there's something really interesting going on with that. The status quo being, if nobody does anything, we're not attacking for 1 and about to win. The opponent doesn't have to draw anything. The opponent can simply Well, I should take that back. The opponent would have to draw something because if they trade, then the 2/2's coming in. So the status quo, there's this thing where if I Alpha Strike, I'm in a better position if the opponent doesn't have anything because the 2 damage gets through this turn. But the opponent still does have to find something. However, if the opponent can find a way to not have to block with that Rummager, then inevitability tilts towards them. So we kind of don't know who has inevitability, and it's kind of tied in with this one above it. Indicators the opponent doesn't have removal versus indicators that they do. And then the last criteria here at the top, what do I lose in the attack? Does it matter? If it doesn't matter much, I'm more likely to send them in. And of course below, if it does matter a lot, I'm less likely to send them in. Well, here I lose the Knight by attacking with everything as opposed to either saying go or certainly attack with a 3/2. I lose the Knight. How important is that? Well, opponent's at 3 life. There's a jump split card in this format. An adventure that gives your creature +2/+1 on flying. I mean, it could be highly relevant. It's certainly not irrelevant, and it's certainly not absolutely critical. So again, it's hard to assess exactly what this means, and that's how real life works. This is not a cheat sheet or checklist where I can say, okay, it has just enough of this. I score this at 27, so therefore I'm going to attack. It doesn't work that way. We're going to have to just weigh things. So how am I thinking about this? Well, I think in general, we can kind of rule out not attacking with anything. I think not attacking with the 3/2 at all is just playing way too scared. We're not likely to beat just the Rummage effect standing on its own, whether our opponent has 4 mana, 6 mana, whatever. And the question is, does the Knight come in? And the Knight punishes an opponent who's forced to simply trade, but rewards an opponent who finds a way not to simply trade. It also punishes an opponent, attacking the Knight also punishes an opponent who's using a pump spell of some kind to take out the Knight as opposed to removal, because then the 2 damage gets through, and now the opponent's simply at 1 life instead of 3. There are some cards in this format that drain the opponent for 1. There's a Knight that mills both players. There's a little 1/1 that drains for 1. So that could be very critical. Again, exact compositions of the decks could be very relevant here. And we risk the Knight for doing so. So what would I do if I looked at this? I would say, I think the thing that looms largest is indicator that the opponent has removal or something to do. It's simply, at least against a competent opponent, even if they had only 5 mana, it's simply too powerful for the opponent to rummage into something. Like if they just have a card that's not useful, are they going to want to rummage on my turn or their turn? Well, they could possibly discourage me from attacking by leveling me if they hold it, but it's just so valuable to be able to do something on your turn. Because even a 2/2 here shuts down our most potent threat, our 3/2. Certainly anything that has a shock effect, a larger creature, would do it if we can cast it this turn. So there's enough of an incentive to rummage on my turn if the opponent, there's a strong indicator with this game state that that the opponent likely has something to do with that mana because they didn't rummage. Now here's where the situation, I think we don't have enough facts to really, I think if the opponent did have 4 mana, exactly 3 or 4 mana, now it makes perfect sense for the opponent to rummage on our turn because now they only have 1 mana remaining. They may not even have a card in their deck that they can cast. So in the context in which they have 3 or 4 mana, that the analysis might flip on its head, and now I think they're likely enough to trade that I would risk the Knight. I would send it in. In the context where they have 5 or 6 mana, I think it's so valuable to rummage, and all the removal in this set is instant speed. The common one in red, common in black, instant speed removal. That's likely enough to come up here that I would just send in the 3/2, force the trade if my opponent doesn't have anything, and settle for that as opposed to risking the Knight to get the extra damage. But I think it probably does come down to how many lands the opponent has. So we don't, again, if you knock out these 2 mountains over here and you just have the 4, well, now we're not getting a lot of information. Now we're back to, well, what am I giving up? I don't think the 2/2 is not likely to matter all that much if the opponent does have the removal. We're probably just losing. I mean, the 2/2 is still blank by the 2/3. They still get the rummage. So we're probably in bad enough shape that I would send it in. But in the game state that I drew up based on the sketch that I had, I would just send the 3/2, understand that it's likely enough that my opponent has removal. Now, if those swamps were forests, again, the situation is different. Now, a pump spell to kill my Knight is that much more likely then instant speed removal to kill my 3/2 and block the night token. And so against mountain, forest, mountain, I would actually again be sending both in. And if you got removal, fine, you got it. But if you have a pump spell, I want you to at least take the 2 from the night. And lastly, if I had a deck that had something like 2 of that +2/+1 and flying sorcery in my deck, then I'm going to need to adjust my strategy to that and do what I can to keep a creature around. So in that context, I'm certainly just attacking with the knight. So we want to think about, I could also have put, what's in our deck. Obviously, like that matters too, but that's baked into inevitability and status quo. I've got a lot more inevitability when I have a jump spell, a pump spell that jumps, or, even just a pump spell, or some kind of drain life effect, that kind of thing. That stuff matters. It impacts how favorable the status quo is, how much inevitability I have. Last time I put this slide up, I was talking about bluffing. I said it's typically not about a leveling war, just play solid. That again applies here. There is certainly a leveling war possible where the opponent could not be rummaging to discourage us. I think for the most part in these spots, that the opponent's paying a lot to do that. They're no longer able to cast their 2/2s, for example. That they're paying enough to do that I don't think we have to really respect it. I think it's just about we should play solid, and if they want to try to level us, fine, but understand that they're actually paying a cost, so it's not just like a free roll. Now, once they have 3 or 4 lands, it more closely resembles a free roll. We're gonna have to adjust accordingly. So hopefully this was an interesting, situation to walk through. I thought it was instructive and also fairly common in games of limited. When do I alpha strike? How do I press an advantage when it's only a slight advantage? These things come up frequently, so we'll probably be talking about them frequently on this channel. If you enjoy the discussion on this channel, please hit that subscribe button and you'll get a notification when those next videos come up. And then lastly, I want to give a quick free plug to a friend of mine who's selling shirts at pokerrags.us. He sells shirts based on the poker community, but I think some of them, including the 2 that are pictured here, are relevant for the Magic community. I'm Just Running Bad, that's my favorite. Degenerate, my second favorite. He's also got a podcast called Sessions. If you like poker, check that out. If not, just check out some of the t-shirts on pokerrags.us. Thanks. See you guys next time.